if you're confused about what to think about GPT-5, how good it is, and if it even matters, then this video is for you. I have researched, tested, and drawn to different conclusions about GPT-5, just like the people that you see on screen here, ever since it came out before arriving at what I'm going to share with you today. So in this video, there won't be any of the fluff that you see on the internet, because by the end, you'll be able to understand the model and be able to use it to help you develop in your AI journey. This goes for whether you've been expecting AGI or whether you're a complete beginner and just started using GPT-5 in the first place. Now to do this, I'll first need to explain everything that has been happening up until now regarding GPT-5. Then I'll show you some short demos that I did to back up these points. And then lastly, I'll talk about what this means for AI in business processes. Now, as you've seen, the internet has been going crazy about this with so much noise, so many different opinions and people doing controversial takes about this. Well, for a bit of context for you to understand, GPT-5 has been teased and advertised ever since 2023 by Sam Altman himself, and even saying that it was going to be AGI by the time it arrived at 2025. And obviously along the way, you have massive improvements like GPT 4.0 and other things that, really boosted up the hype around it. And then towards its actual release, the hype kept building up, and then he even said when it released that it was like having a PhD level experts in your pocket. So taking all of this into consideration, this is more than 2 years of, hype building up and people expecting the promises to be delivered. And short answer is that GPT-5 flopped, right? It's just not as proportionally as good as people thought it was going to be, because people thought it was going to be a step into AGI. And if you don't know what AGI is, it is artificial general intelligence, which means that AI can actually perform various tasks at human level or human quality. And so what this means is that it can self-teach and handle new tasks all the time with broad human-like cognitive capabilities, and even handle unfamiliar tasks that it hasn't, been presented to before, which differs from the current AI that we have right now. And so what you need to understand is that, the release of GPT-5 would have closed the cycle of 2 years of promises and expectations that would finally be delivered and solidify OpenAI's position at the top, bringing about, all different changes to all different sorts of industries, but it clearly wasn't that. So in a summarized way, this is the reason that OpenAI has had their most failed launch to date, and they've gotten so many negative comments and feedback about GPT-5. But objectively speaking, and being real with this context aside, the model is a lot better. It is exponentially better at handling hallucinations, as you can see over here, which has always been the biggest problem with AI. The routing concept allows true beginners to use it more simply without having to pick and choose different models. It is way better at agentic use cases with an increased perception of how to use tools. The computer vision in itself is a lot better, and also coding. But the thing to take note of here is that it's not that much better, because it still hallucinates and has simple mistakes here, just like the spelling of the word blueberry, which that one went pretty viral on the internet. And it's still very comparable to other models such as 4.0, which I'll show you in a second some of the tests that I did. But for this example, I asked 4.0 and GPT-5 for one sort of text. 4.0 was the clear winner. Everything in this video will come from this preconception, right? This idea that it was meant to be a new step into AGI, into a new part of the AI revolution, but we're not there yet. But we'll still take into consideration the objective improvement, and I'll show you the steps that I took and the tests that I made, which still allow you to apply this information into everyday business tasks. Alright, so this is what I mean in terms of having other models very comparable to GPT-5, making GPT-5 look bad. This is only one of the tests that I made, and I'll show you in a second. But it was a very simple prompt here in GPT-5 asking for a 4th grade level essay introduction on global warming. And this essay had to have this information here and have exactly 3 paragraphs and 250 words exactly. I made this request both for GPT-5 and GPT-4.0 over here. Now, if we get the results from GPT-4.0 and copy it into this Grammarly word counter over here, you can see that the result of this was exactly 250 words, just like I asked. But if we come back over here and get the results from GPT-5 in this screen over here, we copy that and then we paste it into the Grammarly screen here, we can see that we got 259 words. And this wasn't a cherry pick result. I tested this like several different times, and this is only one of the other results that I gave. Now, I understand that hallucination and stuff like that, not following instructions, is kind of inherent from AI, but they, really tried their best to comply and do these different things. Now, this is, again, the result from 4.0, which can be pasted in here. If we just delete that one and then paste it in, we got 253 words. Now, obviously it didn't hit the mark, but it was very close to it. And if we go back into GPT-5's result over here and paste it, we can see that we have 258 words. And you can try this out for yourself, because all the legacy models are still available for Plus users. And you can make the side-by-side comparison and see that 4.0 is still a lot more, compliant with your instructions and things that you want it to do than GPT-5 is. And so that is the case on a whole bunch of other different levels on writing, creativity, where these models are, tend to be better than GPT-5, or GPT-5 isn't as dominant as it is. Again, proportional to the idea that people expected when it was released to the market. Now, beyond writing and creativity, one of the factors that was hugely emphasized during the demo and release of GPT-5 was its ability to code now. And indeed, it is a lot better than any of the other models, and it's not even comparable to that extent. But in either case, the market, really resides in a lot of these vibe coders and non-coding platforms right now where you can build your apps. And so proportionally, this is valid to be tested with apps like Lovable and that sort of stuff. So this is exactly what I did here, asking both GPT and Lovable for a version of a game. I'll go through the prompt really quick, which is saying to create a responsive web-based game called Pulse Runner, which is a glowing orb that moves forward automatically along a single lane. The player can jump to avoid glowing obstacles and appear in sync with a looping beat. I described the design that I wanted within the app, and then the obstacles need to be randomly generated. So these are all kind of things that it needs to calculate and think about carefully when it creates the code. So if I open this over here, you can see that it looks very good in terms of design, maybe even better than the Lovable one. But if I go ahead and click start to actually play the game, I'm not actually able to clear any of these blocks, and for some reason I lose before I even hop over the blocks. And this is from a single prompt that it should have gotten right, because it is the very foundation of the game itself. So if I try that again, you can see that I can try as hard as I can, but the orb doesn't actually jump over the blocks. And when you're trying to make a game, it really doesn't help if you're getting these parts of the code wrong. Now, if I go into the Lovable one here, you can see that the design is a lot different, and I'd probably, again, do like the GPT version of it better. But you can see I gave it the exact same prompt, and it was just one prompt to go over everything. So if I go into the testing tab over here, I can open this, and you will see that if I initialize the system, it actually becomes a whole lot more interactive, because I can move, I can, go back and forth, I can get power-ups. And so this is all from one prompt for both of them, and Lovable really takes the win with this one. And I believe with GPT-5, although the code is a lot better and it is possible to vibe code within GPT-5, in comparison to these platforms here that allow for so much more interaction with the user and sort of stuff, and the one-shot aspect of it, GPT-5 is still behind, and it would need kind of a lot more back and forth between me and GPT-5 to be able to get to the point that Lovable has just delivered to me right now. Now, the last area that I wanted to test the quality of GPT-5 was within agentic workflows. So what you see on the screen here is a scenario that I have out of many where I implemented GPT-5. But as soon as I implemented it here, you can visibly see as soon as I implemented it and I received the meeting, essentially this workflow, what it does is it receives transcripts and makes decisions within my company based on that, and then notifies me on Slack, right? But as soon as I changed the model on my workflows over here, I received an error, and the error was that the model had overthought. So essentially my rate limit on the API had been reached, and in doing so, it actually took the wrong steps to complete the workflow and the task that had been handed to it, simply because it thought for too long. And I read this in the GPT, so the OpenAI article, saying that a lot of times it'll think that something is like a trick question. It'll think so hard to the point that it actually gets the answer wrong. So if I click debug on editor and I change the model, you see that for the exact same information, if we change it to the 4.1 model, we'll actually be able to get the correct result with a whole bunch less thinking time, which is exactly what GPT-5 got wrong here. So if we do that, I've debugged an editor, so it's saying that it's pretty much going to use the exact same information that GPT-5 was used to have, and this is a feature that you can use within N8N. Now it thinks a lot quicker, and instead of taking 5 minutes like you saw just before, it takes a lot less time, so it's already using the correct tools this time. And within probably about a minute and a half, it has just finished the workflow and updated me on Slack. And I think this problem here that GPT-5 has just come up against comes back to something that they're calling the new prompt engineering specifically for GPT-5. So this is instructing it specifically on what thoughts to think in order to execute certain tools. A lot of times we will be action-based and in terms of the tools that it needs to execute depending on the scenario. But GPT-5 inherently thinks longer for each kind of situation that it is given. And if you aren't clearly defining what to think step by step before executing a task, which in this case, my prompt, I clearly haven't, then you do get an error similar to what I've just shown you. This isn't to say that GPT-5 isn't meant to be used for agentic AI, because it was, very heavily considered when they created GPT-5. I think there will be a different way to prompt these agents in order to get the most out of them for your agentic workflows. So with that being said, and taking everything that I've said and shown you in this video up to this point, taking all that into consideration, I go into my 3 points about AI specifically for business processes and what this means for you. So I used this post here from Novell a couple of days ago saying that the AI doomsday cult is dying down, which is specifically to say that AGI is not coming anymore. He's obviously always said, if you've been following what he says, that AI is not actually that promising in the future, or it's not going to be that scary because of certain limitations, and his theory has proved right. And so what this means, it's actually a really good news for us if we're following AI and implementing it in our day-to-day businesses. Because up to this point, I guess it has been sort of a very aggressive increase in use of AI within businesses. We saw at different points how people were getting laid off. And although it would have these like troughs down here, and AI wouldn't be as widely implemented maybe in bigger businesses where it was harder to implement, and obviously 80% of AI projects fail nowadays, we were getting towards a point where, one, AI was getting into its best ability to be able to augment human tasks, which is probably where we're at right now. And then number two, it meant that AGI was kind of up here, and it just seemed reachable up until the release of GPT-5, which was promised to us since 2023. And so what this means is, as we've reached this point of, kind of hitting kind of a ceiling in terms of what GPT-5 was promised to us as opposed to what it delivered, then it means that we are stuck here in a good way in this point where AI is just able to augment everything that we do without further threatening our positions in jobs and in day-to-day activities that would 100% be taken up by AGI if we did have it. And so that leads me into my next point, which is really the irony here, is that the importance to know your models, know your prompting, and still have the skill set to be able to utilize AI, and that it's not too late to discard all of these skills because AI will be capable of doing all of these things by itself. It is now more important than ever for you to know the basis of this, the foundation, and be able to understand what they can do to enhance your current business. And what the release of GPT-5 would have been is just one central model for people to use at all times and not have to think about different models out there to be able to enhance what they currently do and automate certain tasks. And so with that being said, yeah, you have to learn your models and learn prompting and all of these skills because now they're more fundamental than ever. And then last but not least here, I have individual testing and just doing things like this on your own time. Because in the internet right now, online and that sort of stuff, you do get caught up in the noise and you do end up trying too many different things without actually ending up in a specific outcome for yourself. So I do encourage you to do your own testing, try out the models that you do think are, interesting for what you would use them in. And you should do that, especially because no one person can do thousands of different tests on one new ChatGPT model or a new platform for vibe coding or anything like that. So it is important for you to draw your own conclusion about it, run your own tests, so that you can then use this information to your advantage. So we covered a lot today, but essentially I'm going to leave you with these 2 points, which is what I promised you at the very start of the video. Right now, I definitely do hope that you have a better understanding of GPT-5 as well as its potential and its limitations right now in the current market. And well, this kind of goes into this next point over here, which is the current opportunity that you have to develop your AI skills with this idea of AGI not being, a presence that you have to look out for, but something that you can use to augment your tasks now more than ever. And with that being said, if you apply it to what you do, you apply it to your business and your systems, then you have all of the benefits to gain from it and with very little downside. So thanks for watching today, and I hope this helped.